Hello and welcome to what I'm hoping is a good day for hot hatches, because this is the new Fiesta ST, a car I've been looking forward to for a long time, but one with some big shoes to fill, because the current Fiesta ST, the one it replaces, is perhaps one of the best modern hot hatches in the market. Why is that? Well, it doesn't overcomplicate things. It sticks to the tried and tested formula for what makes a great hot hatch. It's a bit of a hooligan, it's affordable, it's got a turbocharged engine, it comes in some noisy colours, it's easily tuned, it's everything you want in a hot hatch. Which is interesting because the market has kind of had its ups and downs. More recently, some of the star players in the hot hatch heritage, I suppose, like the Clio, they've kind of gone from being really feisty, track-focused cars into five-door cars with automatic gearboxes. They kind of lost their way a bit. Through all that, thankfully, Ford has been keeping it real in its way. And the current Fiesta ST has kind of saved the market in a way. And I think it's kind of inspired Toyota, people like that, to build cars like the Yaris GRMN. Also Peugeot seems to have got its mojo back, and we're seeing a return to the market for old-fashioned features like limited slip differentials, which is one of the defining things Ford has added to this car. I'll talk about that a little bit in more depth, but it's nice to see that after an age of kind of gimmickry, we're kind of coming back to just traditional mechanical upgrades, because really the formula for a hot hatch is not complicated. You take a cheap Super Mini, you stiffen the suspension, you put a more powerful engine in it, a loud exhaust, maybe a diff, and you go out and you have some fun. Major differences for this car: it's gone from a 1.6 litre 4-cylinder turbo to a 3-cylinder. That's quite a big change. It's still got 200 horsepower, so it's on the money as far as that's concerned. It is pretty feisty, it makes good noise. The key feature, as I say, is that Quaife limited slip diff. Now, headline for this car is that it starts at under 20 grand. Really, you need the ST2, which is 19,995, and to that you need to add the £850 performance pack, which gets you the diff and a couple of other bits and bobs like launch control, which is all good fun, and I'll show you in a bit. Please, if you're buying one of these cars, I implore you, get the performance pack, because, as I'll show you, it does really dominate the driving experience in a really good way. And it's an important thing for Ford to add to this car. They've tried to make it a little bit more grown up and a little bit more refined and all that kind of thing, but hopefully within this car there's still a proper hooligan waiting to get out, because really that's what we want in a hot hatch. It's really what we want in a fast Ford, and I think that's probably enough of an introduction. I need to get out on the road and show you how it goes. Right, so how does the Fiesta ST drive? Well, I think probably let's start as we mean to go on, and I will demonstrate the launch control function to you. This comes with the performance pack, so simply enough, clutch down, first gear, plant the throttle, let the clutch go, and here we go. And yes, there's a big silly grin on my face, because it's quite a silly feature to have in a car, but it's lots of fun. And it kind of tells you a lot about what this car is meant to do, doesn't it? Because hot hatches are meant to be a bit of a giggle. And this one really is. Sorry to cut straight to the conclusion, but this is a really, really good hot hatch. Let me try and explain why. I'll go through the features. The engine is all right. It's got a bit of a different noise to it because it's 3-cylinder. It's a bit gruff. It's very boosty, as you'd expect, because you've got less swept capacity and more of your 200 horsepower is coming through the turbocharger. So it's a little bit soft on the pedal, there's a bit of lag. It's not a kind of classic hot hatch zinger of an engine, but it's got 200 horsepower and it's got loads of mid-range, and the car feels quick. So it's good enough, I think, is probably the way to describe it. And when you're in the sport mode, which I will select now to demonstrate, it makes some naughty bangs and pops when you're slowing down for corners and things like that. So it does all the things you want out of a hot hatch engine. Now then, chassis, that's really this car's key feature, because as we all know, fast Fords are all about the chassis, and this one is a cracker. There's nothing particularly fancy about it, so there's no trick adaptive dampers or anything like that. It's all just down to good, solid engineering. An example of that is on the back. Now they've got these what they call vectoring springs. How do they work? Well, I had to get the chief engineer to draw me a diagram, which I can't share with you now, but basically it makes the twist beam rear suspension much more solidly located and the car a lot more stable. I won't bore you with exactly how it does that, but it's a really good example of how elegant engineering, just redesigning a spring, which is a fairly cheap mechanical component, can make the car better. It just tells you about how Ford approaches things. It doesn't go, right, well, we'll put fancy adaptive dampers or complicated multi-link suspension on it. We will just use our heads a bit and kind of come up with a simple solution that works. And you get kind of examples of that throughout the car. And I think what you get in this car, which really sets it apart and kind of marks it out as a proper hot hatch, is it has a sense of flow. And flow is something quite difficult to engineer into cars. Only people who really know what they're doing can achieve that. And it flows because it's not super stiff. It's not kind of set up for lap times or circuits or things like that. It's set up to work on twisty back roads like this one. And it means that the car is kind of comfortable. It's perhaps a little bit more civilised than the previous one. That could be quite harsh in its way. This one is a lot more refined and comfortable, but it's also still got that kind of chuckability and feistiness that you want in a great hot hatch. Today the roads are really dry. Yesterday they were really greasy and wet, which actually showed the car off better because we could get the sense of the balance. And the balance of this car is traditional, which is to say that if you trail the brakes into the corner or you lift off, the car will rotate, and it's really playful, and that's always been a great quality in the previous Fiesta ST, and it's been carried over into this one. The project head was telling me that it was quite difficult because the new Michelin tyres are really grippy, so actually maintaining some of that lift off oversteer has been a challenge because the tyres are just too damn grippy and you can't get it to move around. But they've managed it, and the kind of playful nature that we love in fast Fords is very much alive and well. And there's some good hot hatch cornering with tyre squeal and exhaust bangs and pops. This is why we love hot hatches, isn't it? You can leather it down a twisty road like this, making a bit of noise, going maybe a little bit too quickly, and it just makes you feel happy. It's not about Nürburgring lap times. It's not about status symbols or anything like that. It's just about having a laugh. Now then, we probably need to talk about that diff and why I think it's so important. Now, I had a chat with Quaife about this, and they were very interesting on the topic. They've been involved with Ford on this from the very earliest days of the project, so they've fully integrated it with all the electronics. Why are we seeing a return of mechanical diffs like this, where previously we'd have had electronic ones? The interesting point Quaife made was that because the way modern engines deliver their power, all that boost, all that torque at low revs, you actually get quite significant traction issues, and you can deal with that in two ways. You can deal with it by reining it in electronically, which does the job, but it cuts the power, and you've got all this bother of making a fast car, and every time you put your foot down it cuts the power. So what's the point? What a mechanical diff does, and why it's suited to modern turbocharged engines like this, is that it's kind of proactive. If you know enough about diffs, you'll understand that an open one will just spin away the torque to the wheel, which the least load takes the path of least resistance. A limited slip diff like the Quaife sends it to the wheel that has the wheel that can make better use of it, basically. So in a corner that would be the outside wheel. So rather than spinning away the power to the useless inside wheel, it actually drives you through the corner, which means you can get on the power really, really aggressively. And actually, the harder you are on the power in this car, the better it goes. And you've really got to kind of grab it by the scruff of the neck, and if you can just feel the diff effectively pulling the car into the turn, and it's quite counterintuitive sensation, because in most powerful front-wheel drive cars, the last thing you do when you're midway around the corner is put your foot down, because it'll just push on, it'll just understeer. But in this car, assuming you haven't completely overcooked it, it just digs in and pulls and pulls and pulls. And when you combine that with a chassis that encourages you to kind of chuck it in on the brakes, back it in a little bit, it just adds up to a car that is devastatingly quick across country, just really good fun. So if I just turn in on the brakes, you see that just that tiny little crack, you just turn in on the brakes, and if you are running wide, you've got options. It's not just one-dimensional. You can really play with this car. You could drive it in a normal fashion, think it was really fun and really fast and all the rest of it, but there's a whole extra car in here for enthusiast drivers, and that's always been Ford's trick, hasn't it? It's made cars that are kind of mainstream, mass market cars that your granny could buy, but they've always made them fun to drive as well. And it's what's made all Fiestas, fast ones and even standard ones, classic first cars. Is why everyone has probably got some sort of fond memory of a Fiesta early in their driving career. I certainly have. And one of the things I'm really relieved about is that although this is a more sophisticated, refined, better equipped, grown up fast Fiesta, it hasn't lost that kind of hooligan spirit that you really, really want in a hot hatch. And the way Ford has done it is not through gimmickry, not through throwing electronic simulations at it. It's done it through good old-fashioned engineering by people who really get it. And in this age of kind of, you know, autonomous cars, electric cars, all the rest of it, why this car stands out is it just has a sense of fun. It puts fun back into driving at a sensible price. It really is. It's kind of the saviour of the hot hatch in a way, and I think just as the previous Fiesta ST kind of restored our love of hot hatches, so this one does too. So yes, I started this out saying this was looking to be a good day for hot hatches, so it is, exactly that. Bravo Ford, well done. I'm a fan.